Thank you all for giving up your time. I'm Pete from Idonics. I guess you probably know enough about Idonics. I won't kind of start banging on about us. So this morning really is to discuss a product that we have called Ignition Post that was originally commissioned by BBC Sport. So Ignition Post is a workflow, file-based workflow tool based around VisRT. And it's used for making templated graphics primarily for post-production, although also for live graphics. So I'm going to kick off, and I apologise for this, but with a single slide from a PowerPoint, which just kind of gives the premise of what Post is about. So, like I say, it was commissioned by Sport, BBC Sport. Two key things that are like a huge brief, as you get, but it boiled down to two things really. One was that they wanted to give space for their producers to produce, i.e. not get wrapped up in making graphics and commissioning graphics. And secondly, allow their designers and graphics folks to get on with their real work, the creative work, not creating graphics manually for post-production. And this kind of boils down to sort of two things really. One is allowing producers to get the graphics quickly, and secondly, cheaply. So fast and cheap is the premise. Let's dive straight in then and look at Post in action. So the producer interface in Post is delivered through a web interface. It's a responsive, fully kind of modern HTML5 application, so responsive web interface. It works just as well on a desktop as it does on an iPad, and indeed, if you have a degree of patience, on a phone. So I'm going to sign in here, and very quickly, just to explain the workflow, divided into three panes, left to right. So on the left-hand pane is a list of templates. The right-hand, in the centre pane, I beg your pardon, is the edit area, and on the right is our render queue. So we'll start off very simply with a text input graphic. Just to point out, really, a big part of what Post is doing is around data-driven graphics. I mean, data-driven graphics is primarily what Idonics are about. So, of course, it's a big part of what Post does. But we'll start off, we'll look at data-driven graphics in a moment, but we'll start off with something very simple, just a straight manual text input graphic. So I've chosen a manual strap here from the list of templates. I'm going to enter a name.
Yeah, I just followed the links and downloads.
Okay, and here's my graphic updating. Here's a little preview. So this preview is being rendered by Viz, a little JPEG that's coming back from one of the Viz engines in our render pool. Depending on how many on your volume requirements, then we can add any number of Viz engines, and there's a queuing system that will pick an available engine out of that pool. So in the preview here, we've just chosen a single engine to generate that preview. So having got our preview, we can then choose what we want to do with it. So we can decide where we want it to be delivered to. So I'm saying I want it to deliver to our Sep2015 site. Equally, we could drop it directly into your MAM system, or direct into your edit platform, add an interplay, for example. Secondly, we choose a codec. So again, we support whatever codecs that Viz supports. So for this instance, I'm going to choose an FCP codec, and I'm going to send that off to my render queue. So we can see it rendering off. While that's going on, we'll take perhaps a look at a data-driven graphic. So I'm going to flip to a different template set. So we have ways of organising and managing templates by set. So I'm going to choose a Six Nations graphic this time, and we'll choose a name strap. Now this graphic is it's a data-bound graphic, but it's bound to Excel data. So here we have for this graphic a list of teams and players that have been imported into Post using Excel. And this template has been set up with data binding into that Excel template. So I'm going to choose a team, I'm going to choose a player, and now here's my little viz preview that's updated here. It's chosen the correct flag, it's chosen the correct name and team. So again, I'll send that off to my render queue. Now on to something a little bit more heavyweight. So we'll choose another match of the day graphic, and this time a score graphic. So for the data-driven graphics for BBC Sport, we're pulling data from the BBC's chosen data provider called XML team, and they're responsible for aggregating data feeds from multiple sources. In this instance, it's a Premier League, UK Premier League, so it's coming via Opta, but we pick it up from an API, a REST API delivered by XML team. So this is all kind of real-time data now coming back through their API. So I'm choosing this particular match, and I'm going to choose a particular score line. So I'm going to choose the full-time score. So we've pulled off the data from their API, and it's now re-rendered my little preview here. And I'm going to send that off to my render queue as before. Last of all, with the templating, we'll take a quick look. We're agnostic about data, so there's a plugin model for data providers. So I'm going to choose a different template set just to kind of prove that. And we have a Transport for London data provider. So this is going off to the Transport for London API, data API. And this template will give us a real-time tube line status. So here's our preview come back from one of our engines here, and we can send that off for render. And just quickly to demo the way that the rendering works, so we've got one render going off here. If we just keep adding more instances of this graphics to render, we can see that we've got two engines in our pool, so we've got two rendering concurrently. And as soon as this one's finished, it's added the next two available into the queue. So there's a kind of robust queuing system available for these graphics. So having rendered these, they will have obviously gone off to our SFTP server. So let's just quickly dive into our SFTP client. And I'm going to log into our SFTP, and for example, here's our Transport for London graphics that we've just rendered off. They're sitting now in our FTP. So in a production environment, these would then get replicated through onto your post-production network, or indeed they would sit directly within your some storage in your post-production network. Equally, if I wanted to, I can just download those renders to my web client. So for a producer, perhaps he's in his hotel room at an OB, he wants to pick up that render, so I can just click this button, it's downloaded it, and now if I click the button here, it's going to play back hopefully in VLC. So here's my VLC client, so I'm just going to play that again. So there's the render that's come back from Viz VLC on my local client. So that kind of wraps up the producer interface. There's obviously a back end involved here. So we'll take a quick look at that process. Now, for that, there's a Windows client that we use. So I'm just going to sign out, sign back in with an administrative login. And having done that, we can see we've got an extra little button here on our interface, which allows me to download and install the Windows management application. So this is using Windows Click Once application. So this is a kind of zero admin install. And bear with me. Okay, so here's our Windows client that's now downloaded and installed. I'm going to log into this. So bear with me. beg your pardon, get the password right. This is annoying, isn't it? Rock and roll, okay. Just wait for these screens to load. Okay, so here's our Windows client. Now I'm just going to whiz through most of the screens just to give you a flavour of what we can do here. So user management, that's obviously a big part of the system. So here's where we create users, send them invites via email, manage password policies, look at the audit trail for user logins and password changes. So this is kind of hopefully will satisfy your information security people. So there's kind of full and robust management of users. Data we looked at. Here's our plugin model for data providers. So here's our TFL provider, XML team, ONS. This is a work in progress. This is a data provider wrapping up the Office for National Statistics REST API to pull in data, census data and business data and so forth. Template sets is where we manage templates to make them kind of searchable and groupable and easy to find for users. Excuse me. Output config is where we define our viz engines and our render queue. So here we've got our two viz engines in our render pool. We can inspect the current status for those engines. If it needs to be, we can restart them remotely. Excuse me, beg your pardon. We can define render configs. This is where we wrap up the post-render templates in viz with the relevant codecs. Drop locations, whether it's a local SFTP, storage locations, and one quick point worth mentioning here, we have kind of remote rendering functionality. So in Post, if you've got a major OB and you want to do a lot of renders at your OB, for example, the Olympics in Rio, you can take a couple of engines out to Rio, and Post will automatically redirect the renders out to those local renderers and drop them into local storage at the OB rather than have to pull them right the way across the internet. System monitoring gives us kind of system health on all the engines and all the data providers with email notifications of downtime. Lastly, renders. This one gives you reporting on template usage, showing you which templates we use most often. Pull wait times. This gives you a clue as to any bottlenecks in your rendering queue. You may decide that you need to add an extra viz renderer to your pool. Lastly, templates. We're going to have a look at the templating procedure here. So I want to take a very quick look at creating excuse me, a new template. So I'm going to choose the test template set. I'll create a new template, give it a name. Okay. Once I've given it a name, I need to choose which viz scene we want to use. So here's a list of scenes that Post has pulled back from our graphics hub. And for this particular one, I am going to pick a scene from here. So here's a thumbnails for all these scenes. I'm going to choose this particular scene. We've selected that scene. I'm just going to click this button here, which brings back default values from that scene, such as the required stop pause and the preview frame. We can obviously adjust these here if required. Once we've done that, we can go to our template builder. So if I go to the controls tab, here's where we can create controls that will then appear in the web application for our operators to fill in the data. So this is a very simple template, so I'm going to choose a user input control. and drag it onto my design surface here. So this is for just straight text entry. And on the right-hand side here, here's a list of all the Viz Trio control objects that we found within the scene. So this is how we expose elements within the scene to the outside world, just as we do in Trio. So I'm going to select this name control. I'm going to pick up here, dropping it onto here, creates a binding now between this control and the GUI and that Viz control. So I want to change perhaps the default value to something like enter name, excuse me, here. I'm going to save my template. And once I've done that, I can hit preview, and this is going to show me how that template is going to look in the web interface. So here's my new template. I'm going to overtype this with my name. Here's my my little Viz preview rendered off here, and I'm kind of now happy with that. So once I'm happy with that, I can now publish this template. So there's a whole layer of publishing and version control workflow within the templating system in Post. So once it's published, I can now go back to my web interface. I'm going to sign out and sign back in as my operator account. I'm going to go, oh, I beg your pardon, I need to, one more step. I need to give my test template, this is part of the kind of permission system, so I need to give that test template set, make that available to my operators. So now that test template set's available to my operators. If I now come back to my web GUI and refresh my page, and I've missed something out here, obviously. Still not there. I'm going to sign out. No demo can be perfect, can it? Sign back in as admin. Okay, as admin, I can see all templates. So here's my template that we just built, and I'm going to drop it in. And here's where I can create my graphic and send it off to my render queue. So that kind of wraps up, pretty much wraps up the demo of the system. I wanted to just kind of briefly talk about the back end of Post and the architecture of Post. So Post is built on our Ignition system framework, which is the same software that we use for graphics automation for elections and so forth. It's the Windows stack, so it runs on Windows Server. It has all the benefits that Ignition has, so we can do dynamic updates with zero downtime. There are no external dependencies apart from the .NET framework on your server, so no requirements for SQL Server or anything. It can run on a physical server or on a virtual server. It can run on a server in your apps room, or we can run it off in the cloud. So it's a kind of highly portable system, and you can run it wherever you like. Essentially, you run off a laptop if you wish. Just kind of briefly, we mentioned the cloud here. We're kind of quite excited about Viz's announcement. They're going to be showing off at IBC the new version of Graphics Hub, which is kind of cloud friendly, which is going to make life enormously easier for sharing graphics, and allow us to have renderers in the cloud and in the graphics hubs in the cloud, much more firewall friendly solution. Lastly, one more PowerPoint slide, and again I kind of apologise for this, but I just want to talk briefly about our roadmap for Post. So here's the one I want to just show you. So the big piece that we're working on at the moment, automation of data-driven graphics. So the concept here is that, for example, a producer can say, I want all graphics for next Saturday's Premier League matches to be rendered automatically. So post can then sit there next Saturday and transparently in the background, each time an event occurs in any of those Premiership League matches, a goal or a card or a substitution, those graphics will automatically be rendered by post. So when the graphic, the producer goes in to do his edit for his package, all the graphics he requires are just going to be sitting there waiting for him. So that's kind of as good as it gets, I think, isn't it, really? Next thing, MAM integration, further MAM integration. We saw we can drop to SFTP or FTP sites. We're currently working on Avid interplay, so we can drop our renders straight into Avid. And then, of course, nothing would be complete without Vis1 integration, so we can drop our post-rendered graphics straight into Vis1. And then IP, that's kind of going to be a big deal for us. So we can already do, we've not looked at it, but we can do SDI live graphics. But IP delivered graphics, I think, IP workflows for live graphics are obviously going to become increasingly important. So that's one of the things that we'll be able to do with post. Watch this space. So that kind of wraps up my my demo here, I think. I don't know if anybody has any questions. How are we doing? Were we all baffled by this? Did we all think it was really cool?
No questions? No? Ah, there's a question.
There's one from Lars. What does it cost? That's a good question, Lars. Okay, so our list price, he says, our list price for post is £45,000 sterling for a server. So with a single server, that's as unlimited clients. That's a kind of a basic post system. When we want to start talking about that's obviously going to be dependent on your requirements, so negotiable price on later requirements. Anybody else? Another point from Lars. Simultaneous users rendering separate things, absolutely. So post will support say unlimited use, not unlimited users, but 100, 200 users, all rendering separately. Can everybody hear me? Lars saying you can't hear me. Can anybody else hear me? Okay, I'm back. Lars, so sorry, yes, it answers your question. The scalability of post really is limited by the number of Viz engines you wish to add to your pool. So we can add as many users, they can be making as many requests as you like. So the dependency really is on how quick you want your renders and how many engines you have available.
Right, well, if
Any more questions? No? Another one from Lars. How many clients do you have at the moment? Right, the honest answer, Lars, is one, BBC Sport. So the premises, of course, of today's webinar is to spread the word. We think Post is a great tool. We think it can be cost effective. We think it can improve your workflow significantly. We think it means you can get your graphics quicker. We think it'll save you money. So we want more people to come to us, obviously. Saving time-wise to the BBC, that's a question you'd have to ask them, isn't it? Really, you know, it's in regular use. The BBC, they're using it for all their sports, so it's used for Saturday football, it's used for Commonwealth Games, it's used for rowing, it's used for Ski Sunday, it's used for Six Nations. It's been used across all their sporting requirements.
How long have they been using it, Pete?
They've been using it in anger now for around 12 months. Lars is asking about VCP. The answer is no at the moment. So, this Lars, you're not the first person to have asked this question, and it's certainly something we'd like to look at. So, if you have an investment in templates for VCP, then yes, it would be great, wouldn't it, if Post would automatically import and read those templates. It's something we're looking at. So, but as it stands, it works with scenes built for Trio, but no VCP support at the moment.
Pete Ferguson, Belfast here. Can I just check do the Viz engines have to be dedicated to Post, or can they be shared and used and sort of ad hoc?
Right. Yeah, I mean the way Sport are using them, they're dedicated to Post and they're DVI engines. Whether you with other resources, that's a very good question. We have a system because of our kind of pool management system. We're kind of polling the engines for availability. So I would want to check with my development colleagues before I gave you a definitive answer on that. In theory, I guess they could be shared, but I would need to come back to you.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I would just add, they just need to be DVI engines, not they don't rely on Matrix hardware.
Yeah, it's just currently we have a DR engine that sits in an apps room that's not used unless we're in a DR situation. So it'd be ideal that could be used more than 90% of the time for something like Post.
Sure.
But then obviously if there's a DR scenario, we would need to use it as a full.
Yeah. Quite right. I mean, in that context, all you need to do normally you sit. I'm back in the Windows client here. I hope you can see it. So back on our output config screen, here's our viz pool. So here's where our two engines are defined, and here's the host name of those engines. All I need to do is, if I just untick that box, then that's disconnecting Post from the engine.
Okay. And I take it that it's multi-user. There's no issue with two people sending something to the queue at the one time.
No, quite right. It's entirely multi-user. Yeah.
And the load balancing, is that is that done through your software, or is there is it connection broker or something like that in the back end, or
no? It's done entirely in our software. So we're managing the balancing and the scheduling of the render queues directly within Post.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So in terms of sort of dependencies, it's a Windows server and it's Viz engines. That's it, really.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, just in terms of your particular infrastructure, BBC Sport have it internet facing. So it's hosted in an apps room in Salford, but it's on a separate DMZ that's internet facing. So the kind of premise there is that that producers can run off their renders from home or from hotel rooms or wherever they like, and yet still have the actual renders delivered through onto the post-production network.
Okay.
Another question.
Another question from Lars. Yes. So the answer is yes. So one server, unlimited logins. In terms of the price, yeah, 45k GBP.